What would you do if your husband told you that you smell so bad he can't stand to be near you, only to discover it was all a lie to cover up his affair with your own sister? Stay tuned because this story will leave you speechless. This is a tale of betrayal, manipulation, and ultimately, survival. What you're about to hear isn't just a story, it's a warning about the depths of human deception and the strength it takes to rise above it. Have you ever trusted someone so completely that you questioned your own reality when they turned against you? Have you ever looked in the mirror and wondered if you were going crazy because the person who promised to love you forever suddenly treated you like you were invisible or worse, repulsive? This is exactly what happened to Grace, and her story will make you reconsider everything you thought you knew about love, family, and loyalty. My name is Grace Turner, and I'm about to share the most painful chapter of my life. A chapter that nearly destroyed me but ultimately made me stronger. I want you to understand something from the very beginning. I wasn't always the broken woman you'll hear about in this story. I was confident, successful, and deeply in love with the man I married. Before everything fell apart, I was a financial analyst in Canary Wharf. I had worked hard to build my career, to create a life I was proud of. I met David Sean at a mutual friend's wedding 8 years before this nightmare began. He was charming, ambitious, and attentive in ways that made me feel like the most special woman in the world. Subscribe, like, comment, or share. Our courtship was beautiful. David would send me flowers at work, write me love letters. Yes, actual handwritten letters, and tell me that I was his answered prayer. When he proposed on a beach in Lekki at sunset, with a ring he had saved for months to buy, I thought I had won the lottery of life. I thought I had found my forever person. We got married in a beautiful ceremony surrounded by family and friends. My sister Amelia was my maid of honor. She caught the bouquet and joked that she would be next. My mother cried tears of joy and told me she was proud of the woman I had become. David's vows that day promised me a lifetime of love, respect, and partnership. For the first few years he kept those promises. We welcomed our first child, a beautiful baby girl we named Lily. 2 years later, our son David Jr. came along. Our lives were busy, chaotic at times, but filled with the kind of love that makes the chaos worthwhile. Then came our third child, a surprise pregnancy that brought us our second daughter, Isabella. And that's when everything changed. It all started after I had our third child. My husband, David, whom I had loved and trusted for 8 years of marriage, suddenly began treating me like I was contaminated. Like I was something disgusting that had invaded his perfect life. The change didn't happen overnight. It was gradual, insidious, like poison slowly seeping into water. At first, I noticed small things. A slight withdrawal when I tried to hug him, a turning away when I leaned in for a kiss. I attributed it to stress. David had been working long hours, trying to secure a promotion at his company. I told myself he was just tired, overwhelmed with the responsibilities of being a father to 3 children. But then it escalated. My husband said that I smell so bad and would always cover his nose whenever I come close to him. This wasn't just a one-time comment made in frustration or exhaustion. Every single day, David would find new ways to humiliate me about this supposed smell. It became his weapon of choice, his method of keeping me at arm's length while slowly dismantling my self-esteem piece by piece. "Shift away this woman, you smell like rotten eggs," he would say, waving his hand in front of his face dramatically, as if my mere presence was suffocating him. The first time he said it, I was genuinely confused. I had just come out of the shower, fresh and clean, wearing one of my favorite dresses. I was going to suggest we go out for D-baby or leave the kids with my sister for a few hours and Rico babysit as a couple. Instead, I was met with disgust. "David, what are you talking about?" "I just showered," I said, laughing nervously, thinking maybe he was joking in some twisted way. "Grace, I'm serious. You need to do something about your hygiene. This is unbearable." I stood there, frozen, unable to process what I was hearing. My husband, the man who had once told me I smelled like heaven, was now telling me I smelled like rotten eggs. But it didn't stop there. Oh no, David had more ammunition in his arsenal of cruelty. He would complain about my stretch marks, the very marks that told the story of carrying his children. Those silver lines on my stomach and hips that represented 9 months of growing his daughters and son, the physical evidence of the sacrifices my body had made to bring his children into the world. "Look at yourself, Grace. You look like a roadmap. How did you let yourself go like this?" he would say, his eyes scanning my body with such disdain that I wanted to disappear. He complained about my weight. Mind you, I was only 15 pounds heavier than I had been before my pregnancies. A completely normal postpartum weight that my doctor assured me would come off naturally with time and gentle exercise. "You've really let yourself go," he would comment while I was trying to breastfeed our daughter. "You used to take pride in your appearance." He complained about my hair. I had always kept my natural hair, styled it beautifully in braids, twists, or let it flow in its natural afro. David had once told me my hair was one of the things he loved most about me, that it made me look regal like a queen. Now he called it unkempt and unprofessional. "Look at yourself in the mirror," he would say, his voice dripping with contempt. "What man would want to be with someone who looks and smells like you?" Each insult was carefully crafted to hit where it hurt most. He knew my insecurities, the things I was already self-conscious about after having 3 children. And he weaponized every single one of them. What people don't understand about emotional abuse is how it rewires your brain. When someone you love tells you something often enough, you start to believe it, even when every rational part of your mind is screaming that it's not true. I would stand in front of the mirror for hours, examining myself, trying to see what David saw. I would lift my arms and smell myself, convinced that maybe there was something wrong with me that I couldn't detect. I would ask myself, am I going crazy? Is there really something wrong with me? David's comments weren't just about my appearance or this fictional smell. They were calculated attacks designed to make me question my own perception of reality. This is what experts call gaslighting, a form of psychological manipulation where someone makes you doubt your own sanity, your own truth, your own experiences. Every time I tried to defend myself, David would twist the conversation. "Why are you being so defensive? I'm just trying to help you." A good husband tells his wife the truth even when it's hard to hear. "You're overreacting, Grace. I'm just concerned about your health. The fact that you can't smell yourself is exactly the problem. If you really loved me and our children, you would take better care of yourself." He framed his cruelty as concern, his abuse as care, his manipulation as love. And for a while I believed him. I tried talking to him, really talking to him. The way we used to communicate when we first got married. I chose a quiet evening when the children were asleep, made his favorite meal and sat him down. "David, I need us to talk about what's been happening. I know my body has changed after having Isabella, but these are normal postpartum changes. Changes that will improve with time. Every woman goes through this." I explained to him about hormonal shifts, about how a woman's body needs time to recover after pregnancy, about how breastfeeding affects everything from your weight to your skin to your body chemistry. But David? He didn't want to hear it. He barely looked up from his phone as I poured my heart out. "Grace, I don't need a biology lesson. I just need you to fix yourself." "But David," the doctor said. "I don't care what the doctor said. I know what I smell and it's disgusting." His words felt like physical blows. Each one landed with precision, leaving invisible bruises that no one else could see. I had never perceived any foul smell from my body. I had always been a clean person, meticulous about my hygiene even before David started his campaign of cruelty. I showered daily, used deodorant, changed my clothes regularly and maintained my grooming routine. When I was working in the office, before my maternity leave, no one ever mentioned anything about a smell. My colleagues would hug me, sit close to me in meetings, share elevators with me. If I truly smelled as bad as David claimed, surely someone would have said something or at least shown some sign of discomfort. But there was nothing. No wrinkled noses, no subtle backing away, no uncomfortable conversations with HR. Nothing. Still, the constant barrage of insults from David made me question everything I thought I knew about myself. Maybe I had become nose-blind to my own odor? Maybe working from home during maternity leave meant I had let my standards slip? Maybe there was something medically wrong with me that I needed to address? So I did what any woman desperate to save her marriage would do. I went overboard with my hygiene routine. I became obsessed with cleanliness to a degree that, looking back now, I realize was completely unhealthy. I was on maternity leave, so I started bathing 3 times daily. Morning, afternoon, and night. Each shower lasted at least 20 minutes as I scrubbed every inch of my body, desperate to eliminate whatever phantom smell David claimed to detect. I bought more perfumes and body sprays than I had ever owned in my life. My bathroom counter looked like a department store beauty section. I had floral scents, fruity scents, musky scents, clean scents, every fragrance you could imagine. I would layer them, spray them on my clothes, on my bedsheets, in my hair. The cost alone was significant. I was spending thousands of naira every week on hygiene products, perfumes, body washes, special soaps that promised to eliminate body odor. Even vaginal washes that I later learned from my doctor were completely baby-accessory and potentially harmful. I changed my underwear 3 times daily just to please him. I would pack multiple changes of clothes if we were going anywhere, terrified that somehow, someway, this mysterious smell would emerge and embarrass me in public. I became paranoid. I would sniff my clothes obsessively, ask my children if mommy smelled okay even though they were too young to understand what I was asking. I avoided physical contact with people, afraid they would detect whatever David was detecting. But nothing changed. Nothing was ever enough for David. No matter how much I bathed, how much perfume I wore, how often I changed my clothes, David's reaction remained the same. "You still smell, Grace. What is wrong with you?" The rejection was soul-crushing. I felt like I was fighting an invisible enemy trying to solve a problem that didn't actually exist. But wait until you hear what the doctor told me about this mysterious smell. Desperate for answers, desperate to fix whatever was wrong with me, I went to the hospital. I made an appointment with a general practitioner, someone who could examine me thoroughly and tell me the truth about what was happening with my body. The morning of my appointment I was nervous. Part of me was afraid the doctor would confirm David's claims, that there was indeed something medically wrong with me. Another part of me hoped for validation, for someone medical professional to tell me I wasn't crazy, that my perception of myself wasn't completely distorted. I sat in the waiting room watching other patients come and go. I noticed how they interacted with each other, with the nurses, with the receptionist. No one moved away from me. No one wrinkled their nose or showed any sign of detecting an offensive odor. This observation gave me a small glimmer of hope. When my name was called, I followed the nurse to the examination room. My hands were shaking as I sat down across from the doctor, a middle-aged woman with kind eyes and a gentle demeanor. "Doctor, this is embarrassing to even say," I began, my voice barely above a whisper. "My husband says I have a terrible body odor. He says it's so bad he can't stand to be near me. Can you examine me and tell me what's wrong?" The doctor didn't laugh or dismiss my concerns. He took me seriously, which I appreciated. "How long has this been an issue?" she asked, making notes in my file. "About 3 months now. It started after I had my 3rd child." "And do you perceive this odor yourself?" "No, never. But my husband is insistent. He says it's unbearable." The doctor conducted a thorough examination. She checked for bacterial infections, hormonal imbalances, metabolic disorders, all the medical conditions that can potentially cause body odor. She took samples, ordered blood work, and even referred me to a specialist just to be absolutely certain. 2 weeks later, I returned for my results. The doctor looked at me with the kindest eyes and said something that would change my entire perspective. "Ma'am, I can assure you there is no smell. You smell perfectly normal. In fact, based on all your test results, you're completely healthy. There is no medical condition causing any unusual body odor. Your hygiene is excellent, your body chemistry is normal, and there is absolutely nothing wrong with you." She paused, leaning forward slightly, her expression becoming more serious. "Mrs. Grace, I've been a doctor for 23 years and I've seen this before. Sometimes when a patient comes in with concerns about body odor that no one else can detect, including medical professionals, and when those concerns are primarily coming from one person, usually a spouse, there might be something else going on." "What do you mean?" I asked, though somewhere deep inside I think I already knew what she was suggesting. "I mean that the problem might not be medical. It might be interpersonal, relational." She didn't say it outright, but her meaning was clear. She was suggesting that David might be lying. That his claims about my smell might have nothing to do with actual smell and everything to do with something else. I left that hospital more confused than ever. If there was no smell, why was my husband treating me this way? What could possibly be his motivation for making me feel so disgusting, so unlovable, so worthless? I drove home in a daze, the doctor's words echoing in my mind. "There is no smell. You smell perfectly normal." I thought about all the money I had wasted on perfumes and special soaps. I thought about the hours I had spent scrubbing my skin until it was raw. I thought about the social situations I had avoided, the hugs I had refused, the isolation I had imposed on myself. All because of a smell that didn't exist. That's when I started paying closer attention to how other people reacted to me. I had always expected other people to cover their noses when I was around them the way David did, but no one ever did. My colleagues at work, I had returned from maternity leave by this point, would hug me in greeting. They would sit close to me in meetings. They would share my office space without any sign of discomfort. If I truly smelled as offensive as David claimed, surely someone in my office would have said something, or at least shown some subtle sign of disgust. But there was nothing. Absolutely nothing. Strangers on the bus would sit next to me without hesitation. People at the market would engage with me normally. My children's teachers would lean close when discussing their progress. My friends would embrace me warmly when we met. Everyone treated me normally. Everyone except David. This observation should have been liberating. It should have immediately made me realize that David was the problem, not me. But emotional abuse doesn't work that way. By this point, David had so thoroughly convinced me that I was disgusting that I couldn't trust my own judgment or the reactions of others. I told myself, maybe they're just being polite. Maybe they talk about how bad I smell behind my back. Maybe David is the only one brave enough to tell me the truth. That's what abuse does to you. It makes you doubt reality itself. Gradually, David's continuous insults began to weigh me down emotionally. The constant criticism, the daily rejection, the relentless reminders that I was somehow defective. It all took its toll. I started withdrawing from social situations. I stopped going out with friends. I made excuses to avoid family gatherings. I was afraid that maybe I really did smell and everyone else was just being polite. I couldn't bear the thought of being the subject of whispered conversations or pitying looks. Depression crept in slowly. Some days I couldn't find the energy to get out of bed. I would lie there listening to my children playing in the next room, knowing I should get up and take care of them, but feeling paralyzed by this overwhelming sense of worthlessness. My sister Amelia used to live with us. She had moved in about a year before my third pregnancy to help with the children while she figured out her next career move. Amelia was my confidant, my support system, the one person I could talk to about anything. She knew about David's criticisms. She had witnessed some of his outbursts. And she had been supportive, telling me not to take his words to heart, that he was just stressed with work and would come around. Then about 4 months after Isabella was born, David started complaining that Amelia didn't respect him. That your sister thinks she can challenge me in my own house, he would rant after Amelia left for work. She talks back to me, questions my decisions, acts like she owns this place. I didn't see it. From my perspective, Amelia was respectful, helpful, and grateful for the accommodation we provided. She helped with the children, contributed to household expenses when she could, and generally tried to stay out of our way. But David was insistent. The complaints escalated from occasional annoyance to daily tirades. Tell her to pack her things and leave. I won't be disrespected in my own home. David, she's my sister. She's helping with the children. Where will she go? That's not my problem, Grace. Either she leaves or I do. It was an ultimatum. My husband or my sister. In that moment I felt trapped, caught between two people I loved, forced to make an impossible choice. I talked to Amelia about it, tears streaming down my face as I explained the situation. I'm so sorry, Amelia. I don't know what's gotten into him. He says you're disrespectful, but I don't see it. Amelia looked hurt, but she was understanding. It's okay, sister. I don't want to cause problems in your marriage. I'll find somewhere else to stay. Where will you go? Don't worry about me. I have some friends I can stay with until I figure things out. You focus on your marriage and your children. So Amelia left and I lost my closest ally. The one person who could have seen through David's lies, who could have supported me through what was coming next, was gone. Looking back now, I realize this was all part of David's plan. He needed to isolate me, to remove anyone who might question what he was doing, anyone who might help me see the truth. And it worked perfectly. The only person I had left was my friend, Zoe. She had been my friend since university and she knew me better than anyone. We had been through everything together. Failed exams, heartbreaks, career challenges, and now this. Zoe lived across town, so we didn't see each other as often as I would have liked, but we talked regularly on the phone. She was my lifeline, the one person who reminded me that I wasn't crazy, that I wasn't worthless, that I deserved better than what I was experiencing. Grace, something isn't right, she would say during our phone conversations. This smell thing doesn't make sense. You've always been clean. And I've hugged you recently, you smell fine. Better than fine, actually. But even Zoe's reassurance couldn't break through the fog of self-doubt that David had created. I was so deep in his web of lies that I couldn't see the truth even when it was right in front of me. But what my friend discovered about my husband will leave you absolutely stew, baby D. Some time ago, about 6 months after Amelia had moved out, David came to me with a serious expression. It was evening and I was in the kitchen preparing baby R. He stood in the doorway, arms crossed, looking troubled. Grace, I need to tell you something about your friend Zoe. My heart sank. Zoe was the last support system I had. If David was about to tell me something terrible about her, I didn't know how I would cope. What about her? I asked, putting down the knife I was using to chop vegetables. She's been making advances at me. Inappropriate advances. I felt the room tilt slightly. What do you mean, advances? She's been texting me, calling me when you're not around, saying things that are completely out of line. She asked me to meet her for drinks last week. Grace, I think she's trying to seduce me. Something about his tone didn't sit right with me. There was a rehearsed quality to his words, like he had practiced this conversation multiple times before delivering it. And the timing seemed suspicious. Zoe had just told me a few days earlier that she thought David was acting strangely and that I should be careful. I think it's best if you warn her never to step foot in this house again, David continued. I've been trying to handle it discreetly, but she's not taking the hint. As your husband, I'm telling you, that woman is not your friend. I stood there, confused and hurt. David had never liked Zoe, always complained that she filled my head with nonsense, about standing up for myself, about knowing my worth, about not accepting mistreatment. He called her a bad influence and suggested she was jealous of our marriage. But Zoe had been nothing but supportive of me, of my marriage, of my family. She had celebrated our wedding, had thrown me baby showers for all 3 of my children, had been there through every difficult moment of my life. The idea that she would betray me like this seemed impossible. Still, David was my husband. Wasn't I supposed to believe him? To trust him? So I decided to ask Zoe directly. I needed to hear her side of the story before making any decisions about our friendship. I called her that night after David had gone to bed. My hands were shaking as I dialed her number. Grace. I was just thinking about you, she answered cheerfully. Zoe, I need to ask you something and I need you to be completely honest with me. Her tone changed immediately. Of course. What is it? David says you've been making advances at him. He says you've been texting him inappropriately, asking him to meet you for drinks, trying to seduce him. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. Then Zoe began to laugh. She laughed and laughed until she was almost crying. Babe, what exactly are you people marrying in the name of husband? She said, still chuckling, but there was no humor in her voice. It was the bitter laugh of someone who had just confirmed their worst suspicions. Then her expression became serious. I could hear it in her voice. Grace, I need to show you something. Can I come over right now? David is here. He'll be upset if you. Then meet me at that restaurant near your office. The one we used to go to for lunch. I'll be there in 30 minutes. Something in her tone told me this was urgent, critical. I made an excuse to David about needing to pick up something from the pharmacy and drove to meet Zoe. She was already there when I arrived, sitting at a corner table with her phone in her hand. Her expression was grave, concerned, angry. A mixture of emotions I couldn't quite read. Grace, before I show you this, I need you to prepare yourself. What you're about to see is going to hurt, but you need to know the truth. She pulled out her phone and showed me screenshot after screenshot of text messages. From David's number. To her phone. Messages I never could have imagined my husband sending. The first message was from 3 months ago. Zoe, you're looking good these days. Been working out. Then another. My wife doesn't take care of herself anymore. It's refreshing to see a woman who values her appearance. The messages escalated from there. Grace is suffocating me with her smell. I need a real woman who takes care of herself. Zoe, you're beautiful and you smell amazing. Why don't you let me treat you the way a woman should be treated? My wife disgusts me. Be my girlfriend and I'll take care of you properly. I can set you up in a nice apartment, give you an allowance. You'd never have to work again. Just think about it. Why are you ignoring my messages? I know you're attracted to me too. There were dozens of messages spanning 3 months, each one more desperate and inappropriate than the last. Zoe had responded to the first few, telling him politely to stop, that she wasn't interested, that he should focus on his marriage. Then she had stopped responding altogether. But David had kept messaging. And messaging. And messaging. I stared at those messages, my hands shaking so badly I almost dropped the phone. The room started spinning. I couldn't breathe. Everything I thought I knew about my husband, my marriage, my life. It was all a lie. Grace, are you okay? Breathe. Just breathe, Zoe said, taking my hand. When did this start? About 3 months ago, right around the time he kicked Amelia out of your house. 3 months ago. Around the same time David had intensified his campaign about my smell. Around the same time he had become increasingly hostile and distant. Zoe saw how confused and broken I looked. She held my hands and said with tears in her own eyes, "Baby, I hope you know you don't smell." That statement hit me like a thunderbolt. The way she said it, the emphasis on the word no, suggested she understood something I was only beginning to grasp. "Wait, what do you mean?" I asked, though part of me already knew the answer. "Grace, your husband has been texting me for months, asking me to be his girlfriend. According to him, you smell so bad that you're suffocating him in his own house. He's told me you've let yourself go, that you're no longer attractive, that he can barely stand to be around you. But Grace, you and I both know that's not true." She paused, letting that sink in. "He's been using this fake smell story as an excuse. As a reason why he needs to be with someone else. As justification for cheating on you. But it's all lies, Grace. Every word of it is lies." I was embarrassed, hurt, and confused all at once. Embarrassed that my husband had been propositioning my best friend. Hurt that he had been lying to me for months. Confused about why would he do this? Why would he go to such elaborate lengths to make me feel disgusting? Remember to subscribe, like, comment or share. "I would have told you earlier, but I didn't know how you would react," Zoe explained, her voice filled with regret. "I was afraid you would blame me or that you wouldn't believe me. These things are delicate. Sometimes wives blame the other woman instead of their husbands. But I couldn't keep silent anymore, especially after he told you I was the one making advances." She squeezed my hands tighter. "You are beautiful, you are enough. Do not let that human you are living with make you feel less of yourself. You are intelligent, kind, a wonderful mother, a successful professional. There is nothing wrong with you, Grace. Nothing." Those words broke something open inside me. I started crying, deep, soul-wrenching sobs that I had been holding back for months. All the pain, all the self-doubt, all the shame I had been carrying, it poured out of me in that restaurant while Zoe held me and let me cry. So I decided to confront him, but what happened next made everything worse. From that day I decided to live my life and ignore David's comments. I stopped the excessive bathing, stopped changing clothes multiple times a day, and started holding my head high again. I knew the truth now. There was no smell. There had never been a smell. David had fabricated this entire story to justify his cheating, to push me away, to make me so insecure that I wouldn't question his behavior or his absences. I thought that once I stopped playing his game, once I stopped reacting to his insults, he would back off. I thought that by reclaiming my dignity I was taking back control of my life and my marriage. But that didn't make things better. It made everything worse. David became more aggressive, more hostile. He realized his psychological manipulation wasn't working anymore, that I had stopped believing his lies, and he didn't like it one bit. That we started living like flatmates, strangers sharing the same roof. We stopped having meals together. We stopped talking beyond what was absolutely necessary for managing the household and the children. The warmth that had once defined our home disappeared, replaced by cold silence and tension. "You've changed," David said one evening, his voice dripping with accusation. "You used to care about what I thought. Now you're just stubborn and disrespectful." "I've changed," I replied, feeling a spark of anger I hadn't allowed myself to feel before. "You're the one who's been lying to me for months. You're the one who's been trying to seduce my best friend. But I'm the one who's changed. Since you want to be stubborn," he told me one evening, standing in the doorway of our bedroom with his arms crossed, "pack your things and move to the other empty room. I don't want you suffocating me in my own bedroom." There was a spare bedroom in our house that we had been using as storage. It was small, with a single window that looked out onto the neighbor's wall. David expected me to move my things there, to sleep there, to essentially exile myself from the master bedroom we had shared for 8 years. Part of me wanted to refuse, to stand my ground and insist that if anyone was leaving that bedroom it should be him. But another part of me, the exhausted, beaten-down part, was almost relieved. At least in that spare room I wouldn't have to pretend anymore. I wouldn't have to lie next to someone who despised me and wonder what I had done wrong. So I moved to the spare room. Despite being known as a wealthy man in our community, David owned a successful construction company and several properties. He stopped taking care of me entirely. The man who had once insisted on paying for everything, who had taken pride in being the provider, suddenly claimed he had no money for my upkeep. I had to provide for myself, buy my own food, pay for my own transportation. I was still on a reduced work schedule because I was breastfeeding, but I had to stretch my salary to cover all my personal expenses. David would come home with shopping bags full of new clothes, new shoes, new gadgets for himself. But if I asked for money for groceries or to replace my worn-out shoes, he would claim poverty. I have 3 children to feed, Grace. I can't afford your expensive lifestyle too. My expensive lifestyle? I was asking for money to buy bread, pasta, eggs, fruit, basic things for the house, not designer handbags. My only consolation was that he didn't play games with his children's welfare. He took good care of them financially and made sure they didn't lack anything. School fees were paid on time. They had good clothes, good food, everything they needed. For that I was grateful. Whatever David's feelings toward me, he still loved his children. He still showed up for them. That gave me some small measure of peace. But it also created a complicated situation. How could I leave a man who was still being a good father? How could I disrupt my children's lives because their father didn't love me anymore? These questions kept me stuck, paralyzed between staying in a dead marriage and leaving to protect my own sanity. I told myself I was staying for the children. But the truth was I was also afraid. Afraid of being alone, afraid of the shame of a failed marriage, afraid of what my family would say, afraid of starting over. But nothing could have prepared me for what my friend discovered next. One day, about 2 months after I had moved to the spare room, Zoe came to my office with a troubled expression. She looked like she hadn't slept, her usual bright energy replaced by something darker, more serious. Grace, I need to talk to you about something and I don't know how to say this. My heart started racing. Those words never preceded good news. What is it? Let's go somewhere private, she said, glancing around my office. We went to the small conference room at the end of the hall. Zoe closed the door and stood there for a moment as if gathering courage. I've been seeing your sister Amelia with David. At first I thought it was just normal in-law interaction, but now I think there's more going on between them. I felt like someone had punched me in the stomach. The air left my lungs in one sharp exhale. What do you mean? Amelia is not even in London. She went back to the Kent after David threw her out. Zoe shook her head slowly, eyes full of something I didn't want to understand. Grace? I've seen them together multiple times. At restaurants, at the mall, even at a hotel in Canary Wharf. They were holding hands, Grace. They were acting like a couple. When did you see this? First time was about 3 weeks ago. I thought maybe I was mistaken, maybe it was someone who looked like Amelia. But then I saw them again last week and again 2 days ago. It's definitely her. My mind was racing, trying to process this information, trying to find some logical explanation that didn't involve my husband and my sister betraying me in the most horrific way possible. Maybe they were just talking. Maybe David was helping her with something, I said, grasping at straws. Grace, they were kissing. I saw them kissing. The words hung in the air between us, heavy and undeniable. That evening I did some investigating. I called people in the Kent, asked about Amelia. Our cousin said she hadn't seen Amelia in months. Our aunt said Amelia hadn't visited since Christmas. My younger brother said he had been trying to reach her but her number wasn't going through. Nobody had seen her in the Kent. Nobody knew where she was. Then I remembered something. Amelia had posted on Instagram 2 weeks ago. A picture of a meal from a restaurant I recognized. A restaurant in Canary Wharf, London. I scrolled through her social media looking for clues I had missed. There were subtle things. Pictures taken in locations I knew were in London, status updates that mentioned places in the city, check-ins at gyms and salons that were definitely not in our Kent. How had I not noticed this before? How had I been so blind? I hired a private investigator. Yes, I spent my own hard-earned money to uncover the truth about my own life. I gave him pictures of David and Amelia, told him what little I knew, and asked him to find out if they were indeed together. I need to know the truth, I told him. Whatever it is, I need to know. 2 weeks later he called me. Ma, I have information for you. Can we meet? We met at a small restaurant far from my usual haunts. The investigator opened a folder filled with photographs that would forever change my life. What he found broke me completely. David had rented a 2-bedroom apartment in Canary Wharf for Amelia. A beautiful, modern apartment in one of the upscale areas of London. The kind of apartment I had always dreamed of living in, but David said we couldn't afford. The photographs showed everything. David and Amelia entering the apartment together. David and Amelia at the supermarket, shopping for groceries like a married couple. David and Amelia at restaurants, holding hands across the table. David and Amelia at the cinema, his arm around her shoulders. They had been living together as lovers for over 6 months. That meant it had started around the time David kicked Amelia out of our house. Maybe even before that. Maybe they had been carrying on their affair right under my roof, laughing at me behind my back while I struggled to understand why my husband suddenly found me disgusting. The same man who said I smelled too bad to share a bedroom with was living with my own sister. The investigator had more information. He pays for everything. Rent, her shopping, her salon appointments, even bought her a car last month. Odor. Red. Car. He bought my sister a car while telling me he couldn't afford to give me money for groceries. 4 days after receiving that report, I cried myself to sleep. I couldn't breathe well, couldn't eat, couldn't function. I called in sick to work, something I had never done before unless I was genuinely ill. How could my own sister do this to me? How could she betray me like this? Amelia, whom I had loved and protected our entire lives. Amelia, whom I had supported financially when our parents couldn't. Amelia, who had been my maid of honor at my wedding. Amelia, who had held my babies when they were born. How could she look me in the face every day while sleeping with my husband? How could she accept my kindness, my hospitality, my love, while plotting to take my place? And David. The man I had trusted with my life, with my future, with my children. The man I had built a home with, a family with. How could he do this? The betrayal was multi-layered, complex, painful in ways I didn't even know were possible. It wasn't just about the affair. It was about the systematic dismantling of my self-worth, the elaborate lies, the gaslighting, the manipulation. It was about him making me question my own sanity while he built a whole separate life with my sister. But wait until you hear what my own mother said when I confronted her. I decided to call a family meeting. I couldn't carry this pain alone anymore. I needed answers. I needed to understand how this had happened, how people I loved could hurt me so deeply that I invited my mother, Amelia, and David to our house on a Saturday afternoon. I asked Zoe to be there too for support. I needed someone in that room who was on my side. When everyone arrived, the tension was palpable. Amelia looked nervous, fidgeting with her phone. David looked annoyed, like this meeting was inconveniencing him. My mother looked confused, unsure why she had been summoned. "Thank you all for coming," I began, my voice steadier than I felt. "I've called this meeting because I've discovered something, and I need to address it with all of you present." I laid the photographs from the investigator on the coffee table. Pictures of David and Amelia together, holding hands, kissing, entering the apartment. The room fell silent. My mother picked up one of the photographs, studied it, then put it down without saying anything. "Mom, did you know about this?" I asked my mother directly. My mother looked uncomfortable, shifting in her seat. She wouldn't meet my eyes. "Mom, I asked you a question. Did you know my husband was having an affair with my sister?" "Grace, you know your husband has been our provider," she finally said, her voice quiet but firm. "He pays your father's medical bills, he pays for your younger brother's school fees. He has done so much for our family." "That doesn't answer my question, Mom." She sighed, still not looking at me. "Amelia told me about their situation a few months ago. She asked for my blessing." "Your blessing?" I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Your blessing to steal my husband? Since David is no longer interested in you, it's better that he continues with Amelia instead of leaving the family completely. At least this way the money stays in the family. Your children will still be taken care of. Your father's medical bills will still be paid." I stared at my mother. This woman who had given birth to me, raised me, and supposedly loved me. She was justifying my sister's betrayal and my husband's affair because of money. So my marriage, my happiness, my dignity, none of that matters? As long as the money keeps coming, I should just accept that my husband is with my sister. "Grace, you need to be practical. You have 3 children. Where will you go if you leave David? How will you survive? And your father's condition is serious. Without David's help, we cannot afford his treatment. My mother was choosing money over me. She was choosing my sister's affair over my pain. She was choosing to maintain financial stability over supporting her daughter through the worst crisis of her life. I can't believe you, Mom. I cannot believe you would do this to me. I'm not doing anything to you, Grace. I'm being realistic. Life is hard. Marriage is hard. Sometimes we have to make compromises. Compromises? This isn't a compromise, Mom. This is a complete betrayal. Amelia had been quiet throughout this exchange, but now she spoke up. She looked me straight in the face with no shame, no remorse, no guilt whatsoever. Sister, you are just bitter. David told me he doesn't love you anymore. Move on and allow him to be with the one that pleases him. The casualness of her statement, the complete lack of empathy, the dismissive tone, it all hit me like a physical blow. Amelia, I am your sister. I took care of you when Mom couldn't afford to. I paid for your high school forms, I bought your textbooks, I helped you with your school fees. I gave you a place to stay when you needed it. How could you do this to me? That's in the past, she interrupted, waving her hand dismissively. What does that have to do with now? Everything. It has everything to do with now. I loved you. I trusted you. I treated you like family because you are family. And I'm grateful for all you did, Amelia said, but her tone suggested she wasn't grateful at all. But that doesn't mean I should sacrifice my own happiness. David loves me now and I love him. We're happy together. Why should we deny ourselves because you can't accept that he's moved on? I can't accept it? I was almost shouting now. You're sleeping with my husband. You're having an affair with my children's father. How am I the unreasonable one here? Grace, calm down, Amelia said in a tone someone might use with an hysterical child. You're making this more dramatic than it needs to be. David and I fell in love. These things happen. We can't control who we love. You can control whether you act on it. You're my sister, Amelia. My sister. There are boundaries, lines you don't cross, and you've crossed every single one. Well, I'm sorry you feel that way, Amelia said, but it was clear she wasn't sorry at all. But I'm not going to apologize for being happy. For the first time in my life, I have a man who treats me well, who provides for me, who makes me feel beautiful. I'm not giving that up because you can't handle it. The irony of her statement wasn't lost on me. David treated her well? The same David who had psychologically tortured me for months? The same David who had lied, manipulated, and gaslit me until I questioned my own sanity. But I didn't say any of this. I realized that Amelia was too deep in her delusion to see the truth. She thought she had won some prize, that she was special, that David truly loved her. She didn't realize she was just a pawn in whatever game David was playing. And then my husband said something that almost made me lose my mind. David had been sitting quietly during all of this, an amused expression on his face, as if he was watching an entertaining television show rather than participating in the destruction of his family. Now he spoke, his voice calm and matter-of-fact. Grace, I hope your sister told you the good news. Get ready because Amelia will be moving in as my new wife soon. I think a two-wife system could work well. You'll handle the children and the household and Amelia will handle other things. The audacity. The sheer audacity of this man. The pain in my chest was unbearable. I screamed, no longer caring who heard me, no longer caring about decorum or dignity. How did this happen? You two were enemies. You threw her out of this house because you said she didn't respect you. David laughed, actually laughed at my pain. It was a cold, cruel sound that I had never heard from him before. I threw her out because I was already falling in love with her, and I didn't want you to suspect anything. We needed some distance, some space to develop our relationship without your constant presence. But now that you know, there's no point pretending anymore. But you said I smell. You said I disgust you. You made me feel like I was worthless, like there was something fundamentally wrong with me. David shrugged, completely unmoved by my distress. I needed you to stay away from me so I could be with Amelia without feeling guilty. The smell story worked perfectly. It kept you at a distance, made you self-conscious enough that you stopped trying to be intimate with me. Honestly, it was a brilliant solution. You were suffocating me with your neediness, your expectations, your constant demands for attention. I needed space, and telling you that you smelled was the easiest way to get it. I stared at him, this man I had married, this man I had built a life with. He had systematically destroyed my self-esteem, my confidence, my sense of reality. All so he could comfortably cheat on me with my sister. Do you understand what you did to me? I whispered, tears streaming down my face. Do you understand how much you hurt me? Grace, you're being dramatic. All I did was tell you the truth about how you smell. There is no smell. I screamed. There never was a smell. The doctor confirmed it. You made it up. You made me think I was crazy, made me question my own reality, made me spend money and time and energy trying to fix a problem that didn't exist. Well, if you want to get technical about it, yes, I exaggerated. But you were letting yourself go, Grace. Your body changed after the babies. You weren't taking care of yourself the way you used to. I had 3 children. Your children. My body changed because I carried your babies for 9 months. That's not letting myself go. That's biology. David stood up, straightening his shirt with an air of finality. Look, Grace, I've made my decision. Amelia makes me happy in ways you never could. She's younger, more energetic, more appreciative. She doesn't nag me about spending time with the family or ask me where I've been. She just makes me feel good. She's using you, I said, though I knew he wouldn't listen. She's with you because you have money, because you're providing for her. The moment things get difficult, she'll leave. That's rich coming from you. Weren't you also attracted to me because I had money? Because I could provide? Let's not pretend this marriage was ever about anything but security for you. That statement hurt more than anything else he had said. Because it wasn't true. I had loved David. I had truly, deeply loved him. Yes, his financial stability was attractive, but it wasn't why I married him. I married him because I thought he was kind, because I thought he respected me, because I thought we were building a partnership. How wrong I had been that I tried so hard to bear this pain, but the betrayal was too much for me to handle. It wasn't just one betrayal. It was layers upon layers of deception, cruelty, and manipulation. My husband had made me question my sanity. My sister had stolen my marriage. My mother had chosen money over my well-being. I was drowning in a sea of hurt with no life raft in sight that I began to question everything. If my mother could choose money over my happiness, was she truly my mother? If my sister could sleep with my husband, was she truly my sister? If David could torture me psychologically for months just to justify his affair, had he ever truly loved me? The foundations of everything I had believed about my life, my family, my marriage, all of it crumbled. I felt like I was floating in space with nothing to hold on to, no solid ground beneath my feet. That night, after everyone had left, after the confrontation had ended with no resolution, no apologies, no accountability, I called Zoe. I can't take this anymore, I told her through tears. They've all betrayed me. My husband, my sister, even my mother. There's no one left. I feel so alone. Grace, listen to me. You are not alone. You have me, you have your children, you have yourself. And we're going to fix this. But we need a plan. A plan? Zoe, what plan could possibly fix this? My marriage is over. My family has turned against me. What is there to fix? We're going to make sure you come out of this stronger. We're going to make sure David doesn't get away with this. We're going to make sure Amelia understands there are consequences for her actions. And we're going to make sure you rebuild your life on your own terms. Her conviction, her belief in me when I had no belief in myself. It gave me a tiny spark of hope. So we came up with a plan that would expose them all. Zoe came over the next day. We sat in my small spare bedroom, the room David had exiled me to, and we strategized. First, Zoe said, pulling out a notebook, we need to protect you and your children financially. David is supporting his mistress, your sister, with family money. He's buying her cars and renting her apartments while reducing your support. That's not just wrong, it's illegal. London law protects wives from this kind of financial abandonment. I hadn't even thought about the legal aspects. I had been so consumed with the emotional pain that the practical implications hadn't occurred to me. What do I need to do? We need to document everything. Bank statements, receipts, evidence of his spending on Amelia versus his spending on your household. We need to show that he's deliberately diverting marital assets to his mistress. Over the next few weeks, Zoe and I became investigators. We gathered evidence, photos, recordings, financial records, witness statements. My private investigator had already provided the photographs of David and Amelia together. Now we needed to build a comprehensive case. We're going to expose David for the liar and cheater he is, Zoe said with determination. We're going to make sure everyone knows the truth. Your family, his family, your church, your community. Everyone is going to know exactly what kind of man David is. But our plan wasn't just about revenge. It was about justice. It was about making sure no other woman would go through what I had experienced. It was about protecting my children's future and ensuring they understood that what their father did was wrong. We also need to address Amelia, I said. She needs to understand that there are consequences for her actions. Agreed. But we need to be smart about this. We can't just go in emotional and angry. We need to be calculated, strategic, methodical. I consulted with a lawyer, a woman Zoe knew who specialized in family law. She laid out my options clearly. You have grounds for divorce based on adultery. You also have grounds to seek full custody of your children given David's behavior and his relationship with your sister, which demonstrates poor judgment and an unstable home environment. Financially, you're entitled to a significant portion of marital assets, and David can be compelled to continue supporting you and the children at the level he's been supporting Amelia. For the first time in months, I felt a sense of control returning. I wasn't just a victim anymore. I was someone taking action, someone fighting back, someone reclaiming her life. We discovered that David had been more foolish than we realized. He had been using his regular credit cards to pay for everything for Amelia. The apartment, the car, shopping trips, babyrs. All of it was documented, all of it traceable. He had been texting Amelia from his regular phone, not even bothering with a secret phone or encrypted messages. Their entire relationship was laid out in black and white. Thousands of messages expressing love, making plans, discussing their future together while mocking me. Look at this one, Zoe said, showing me a message from David to Amelia. He calls you the old wife, and talks about how much happier he is with the new model. He's disgusting. Reading those messages was painful, but it was also clarifying. It removed any doubt I might have had about whether I was overreacting or being unreasonable. David was cruel. He was deliberate in his cruelty. And he deserved to face consequences. Here's what we're going to do, Zoe said, laying out the final plan. We're going to organize a gathering, your church community group, some family members, some friends. We'll frame it as a marriage renewal ceremony or a family celebration. David will come because he loves the attention, loves being seen as the successful provider. And then we're going to expose everything. Photos, messages, financial records. We're going to let everyone see exactly what kind of man he is and what kind of woman your sister has become. We're going to let them see the truth that you've been living with. It was risky. It was dramatic. But after months of suffering in silence, after months of being made to feel like I was the problem, I wanted the truth to come out. I wanted people to know what had been done to me. What we discovered during our investigation shocked even us. And what we did next. Well, you'll have to wait for part 2 to find out how this story ends. But I can promise you this, David, Amelia, and even my mother got exactly what they deserved. The night before our planned exposure, Zoe and I stayed up late, going over every detail of our plan. We had evidence, we had witnesses, we had legal documentation. We were ready. But as we sat there reviewing everything we had uncovered, we realized that David's betrayal went even deeper than we had initially discovered. There were more financial irregularities, more instances of deception, more layers to his lies than we had imagined. Your evaluation can also save a marriage. Like, comment or share. The scope of what we had uncovered was massive. It would require hours to detail every discovery, every piece of evidence, every twist in this terrible story. Grace, Zoe said, looking at me seriously, what you've been through is one of the worst betrayals I've ever witnessed. And what you're about to do takes incredible courage. I want you to know how proud I am of you. I looked at my friend, this woman who had stood by me when my own family had abandoned me, who had believed me when I couldn't believe myself, who had helped me find the strength to fight back. I couldn't have done any of this without you, Zoe. You saved my life. Literally. You saved your own life, Grace. I just reminded you that you were worth saving. The next day would change everything. The truth would come out. David and Amelia would face consequences. My mother would have to confront her own complicity. And I would begin the process of rebuilding my life from the ashes of this betrayal. But that's a story for another time. If you want to know how Grace got her revenge and what happened to David and Amelia, make sure you subscribe to this channel and hit that notification bell. Part 2 of this story will leave you speechless. You'll want to know how Grace exposed David in front of everyone, what happened when Amelia realized she wasn't as special as she thought, and how Grace ultimately rebuilt her life stronger than ever. Turn on notifications so you don't miss the continuation of this incredible story of betrayal and redemption. And if you've ever been betrayed by someone you trusted, drop a comment below. You're not alone in this journey. Your story matters. Your pain is valid. And like Grace, you have the strength to overcome. What would you do in Grace's situation? Would you expose your cheating spouse publicly, or handle it privately? Share your thoughts in the comments. Have you ever experienced gaslighting in a relationship? How did you recognize it and how did you get out? Your experience could help someone else who's going through the same thing right now. Let me remind you of something important. If someone is making you question your own reality, if someone is making you feel like you're crazy for having normal reactions to their bad behavior, if someone is systematically destroying your self-esteem, that's abuse. It doesn't matter if they never hit you. It doesn't matter if they're still providing for you financially. Emotional and psychological abuse is real and it's devastating. You deserve better. You deserve to be loved, respected, and treated with dignity. You deserve a partner who builds you up instead of tearing you down. You deserve a family that supports you instead of betraying you. If Grace's story resonates with you, if you see yourself in her situation, please know that there is hope. There is a way out. You are stronger than you think and you don't have to stay in a situation that's destroying you. Until next time, stay strong and remember, you are enough. You have always been enough. Anyone who makes you feel otherwise is revealing their own inadequacy, not yours. Subscribe now to see where Grace executes her plan and David and Amelia face the consequences of their betrayal. Trust me, you don't want to miss what happens next. What happened when Grace exposed David publicly? How did Amelia react when she realized she was just another victim of David's manipulation? Did Grace's mother ever apologize for choosing money over her daughter? What legal consequences did David face for his financial manipulation? How did Grace rebuild her life after this devastating betrayal? Is Grace happier now than she was in her marriage? Did David and Amelia's relationship last, or did it fall apart as Grace predicted? All these questions and more will be answered in part 2. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications. Remember, this BTRAYAL is a safe space for sharing your stories, your struggles, and your victories. We're building a community of people who support each other, who lift each other up, who remind each other that we're not alone in our struggles. Drop a comment sharing your experience. You never know who might read it and realize they're not alone, that there's hope, that they can survive and even thrive after betrayal. Together we're stronger. Together we heal. Together we overcome. If this story resonated with you, subscribe to this channel, turn on notifications so you don't miss the dramatic conclusion. Grace's journey isn't over. The best part, the part where she takes back her power and rebuilds her life, is still to come. And you'll want to be here for it. See you in part 2, where justice is served and Grace discovers that sometimes the end of one chapter is the beginning of something even better. This is Grace's story, but it could be anyone's story. Betrayal doesn't discriminate. It happens to good people, to strong people, to people who did nothing wrong. But here's what I want you to take away from this. Surviving betrayal is possible. Thriving after betrayal is possible. You are not defined by what was done to you. You are defined by how you rise above it. This is just the beginning. Welcome back to the conclusion of Grace's story, the story that left thousands of you demanding to know. What happened next? How did Grace get her revenge? And where is she now? What Grace did next was so brilliant, so calculated, and so devastating that David, Amelia, and even her mother are still dealing with the consequences today. And by the end of this video, you'll understand why sometimes the best revenge isn't getting even, it's getting everything. Grace was broken, betrayed, and isolated. But she was about to become something else entirely. Unstoppable. Grace didn't just want revenge. She wanted justice. And there's a difference. In the weeks following that devastating family meeting where Grace transformed, Zoe watched as her broken friend became a woman. I'm not going to just cry and accept this, Grace told Zoe during one of their planning sessions. I'm going to make sure everyone knows the truth. I'm going to make sure there are real consequences. And I'm going to make sure I never have to depend on David or anyone else ever again. The first step was securing a lawyer. Not just any lawyer, but one of the best family law attorneys in London. Her name was Barrister Victoria Blake, a woman known for her fierce advocacy for women's rights in divorce cases. My first meeting with Barrister Blake was transformative. Mrs. Grace, what your husband has done isn't just morally wrong. It's legally actionable on multiple fronts, Barrister Blake explained, reviewing all the evidence Grace and Zoe had gathered. What do you mean? Your husband has committed adultery, which is grounds for divorce. But more than that, he's engaged in financial abuse by diverting marital assets to his mistress while failing to adequately support you. He's also caused you severe emotional distress through his psychological manipulation. We can pursue this aggressively. Barrister Blake laid out a comprehensive legal strategy. We will file immediately on grounds of adultery, include documentation of the affair with Amalia. Highlight the financial disparities in how David treated his wife versus his mistress. Identify what David had spent on Amalia, calculate what he was entitled to. Conduct a thorough investigation of all marital assets. Then you will also seek primary custody of the 3 children. Request generous child support payments and document David's unstable home environment, planning to bring mistress into the home. Request substantial alimony given David's income and the length of the marriage. Highlight your reduced work schedule due to childcare and demonstrate your inability to maintain your previous standard of living. Potentially sue for the return of marital funds spent on Amalia and seek compensation for the apartment, car, and other expenses. This is going to be expensive, Al said, worried about legal fees. Don't worry about my fees right now, Barrister Blake said with a knowing smile. We'll include them in what we recover from David. By the time we're done, he'll be paying for the lawyer who took him down. Next, Al hired a forensic accountant recommended by Barrister Blake. His name was Mr. Foster, and he specialized in tracing hidden assets in divorce cases. Mrs. Grace, I need access to all financial records. Bank statements, credit card bills, property documents, business records, everything, Mr. Foster explained. Grace provided everything she could access. What Mr. Foster discovered was stunning. David's construction company, $15 to $20 million per year rental properties, $8 million per year investments, $5 million per year total legitimate annual income, $28 to $33 million his access is primary residence, $45 million value. 3 rental properties, $60 million combined value, company ownership, $80 million value vehicles, $25 million including the car he bought for Amalia, bank accounts and investments, $40 million total assets, approximately $250 million money spent on Amalia, 6 months. Apartment rent, $1.2 million car, $7 million shopping and allowances, $2.5 million restaurants and entertainment, $80,000 total spent on mistress, $11.5 million in 6 months money provided for Grace, same 6 months. Household expenses, $600,000. Children's expenses, $2 million. Personal allowance for Grace, $0. Total, $2.6 million. Less than a quarter of what he spent on Amalia. But Mr. Foster found something else. Something even more damaging. Mrs. Grace, your husband has been hiding income, Mr. Foster revealed. He has 2 bank accounts you don't know about. He's been diverting money from the construction company into personal accounts and not declaring it. He's also claimed false expenses to reduce his tax burden. What does that mean? It means he's committed tax fraud. And it means there's even more money in this marriage than you realized. Your share could be substantial. I and Zoe spent weeks meticulously organizing evidence. Photos of David and Amalia together from the private investigator. Screenshots of David's text messages to Zoe. Screenshots of romantic messages between David and Amalia. Photos of the apartment David rented for Amalia. Photos of the car he bought her. Then the bank statements showing transfers to Amalia. Credit card bills showing purchases for Amalia. Rental agreement for Amalia's apartment. Every piece of evidence was catalogued, dated, and prepared for maximum impact. I planned an event that would expose David in front of everyone who mattered. But what happened exceeded even my expectations. I decided to organize what Al publicly called a marriage renewal celebration and family Thanksgiving. I sent out invitations 3 weeks in advance. To our church community, about 80 people, David's business associates, extended family members from both sides, neighbors and friends, my colleagues from work, even some of David's company employees. David was suspicious at first. What is this about, Grace? David, despite our problems, I want to honor you publicly for being a provider for our family. I want to thank you in front of everyone for all you've done. It's important for our children to see their parents united. David's ego couldn't resist. The idea of being publicly praised, of being celebrated as the successful provider and family man, it was exactly what he wanted. He agreed immediately and even contributed money for the event. Make sure it's nice, he said. I want people to see that I know how to treat my family. The irony was not lost on Grace. The event was held at a nice event center in Canary Wharf on a Saturday afternoon. Grace had spared no expense. I used David's own money to create the venue for his public humiliation. The hall was beautifully decorated. There was food, drinks, music. A large projector screen was set up at the front, which guests assumed would show family photos and videos. Barrister Blake was there, dressed as a regular guest. Mr. Foster, the forensic accountant, was also present. The private investigator stationed himself near the exit, just in case David tried to run. Zoe was my right hand, managing all the technical aspects of the presentation we were about to deliver. My mother was there looking proud, probably thinking I had finally accepted the situation. Amalia was there too. David had insisted on bringing her, telling Grace, she's family and she's going to be part of this family officially soon. I had smiled sweetly and said, of course. Everyone who needs to be here will be here. I opened the event with a speech that had everyone nodding in approval. Thank you all for coming today. I know many of you are wondering why I organized this celebration. Well, I believe in honoring truth and integrity. I believe in making sure that everyone sees people for who they really are. Today, I want to make sure everyone here knows the complete truth about my marriage. People smiled, thinking this was going to be a sweet tribute to David. My husband David has always been concerned about appearances. He's very concerned about what people think. He's built a reputation as a successful businessman, a generous provider, a family man. And today I'm going to show you exactly who David really is. The room started to feel uncomfortable. David shifted in his seat, suddenly uneasy. For months my husband told me I had a terrible body odor. Every day he would cover his nose, tell me I smelled like rotten eggs, refused to be near me. He made me question my own sanity. People looked confused. This wasn't the praise they expected. I went to the doctor. I bathed multiple times a day. I spent thousands on perfumes and special soaps. And do you know what the doctor told me? I clicked the remote and the projector screen lit up with a letter from my doctor. Medical assessment. Patient shows no signs of unusual body odor. All tests normal. Hygiene is excellent. No medical condition detected. That's right. There was no smell. My husband lied. And do you want to know why he lied? I clicked the remote again. The screen filled with the first photograph. David and Amalia at a restaurant holding hands across the table. The room erupted in gasps and murmurs. My husband was having an affair. With my own sister. Amalia tried to stand up, but Zoe's brothers, who Grace had strategically seated nearby, blocked her exit. David jumped up. Grace, what do you think you're doing? I'm doing what you should have done months ago, David. I'm telling the truth. Grace clicked through image after image. David and Amalia kissing outside the apartment. David and Amalia shopping together. David and Amalia at the movies. The apartment building, the car's purchase documents with Amalia's name. Then came the financial evidence displayed on clear charts that everyone could understand. Money David spent on his mistress in 6 months. $11.5 million. Money David provided for his wife and children in 6 months. $2.6 million. The crowd was in shock. People were whispering, pointing, staring at David and Amalia with disgust. But wait, Grace said, her voice steady and strong. It gets better. She showed the text messages David had sent to Zoe, trying to seduce her. My husband not only had an affair with my sister, but he also tried to seduce my best friend. When she refused him, he accused her of making advances toward him. He tried to isolate me from the one person who could help me see the truth. Zoe stood up and addressed the crowd. Everything Grace is saying is true. I have all the messages. David pursued me for months, and when I refused him and threatened to tell Grace, he tried to turn Grace against me. Then Elle turned to my mother, who was sitting frozen in her seat. My mother knew about this affair. She knew my husband was with my sister. And do you know what she told me? She told me to accept it. She told me that David's money was more important than my dignity. She told me I should let my sister be with my husband because the money stays in the family. The crowd turned to look at Grace's mother with expressions of horror and disgust. "Mummy, stand up," Al said, my voice cold. "Stand up and tell these people what you told me. Tell them how you chose money over your daughter." My mother tried to speak but no words came out. She looked around at the judging faces and began to cry. "My sister Amalia is here too," Al continued. "Amalia, stand up. Show everyone the woman who betrayed her own sister. Show them the woman who slept with her sister's husband in the same house where that sister's children sleep." Amalia stood up, defiant even now. "You're just bitter, Grace. David doesn't love you anymore." "Love?" Grace laughed bitterly. "You think this is about love? Amalia, let me show you what David really thinks of you." Grace played an audio recording, one that the private investigator had captured when David was talking to one of his friends at a bar. David's voice came through the speakers. "Amalia is fun, man. Young, naive, easy to control. She's grateful for everything I give her. Not like Grace, always asking questions, always expecting respect. Amalia is just temporary until I figure out what I really want to do. She thinks I'm going to marry her." Laughs. "These women are so easy to manipulate." The color drained from Amalia's face. The entire room heard David laugh about manipulating her, about her being temporary. "So Amalia," Grace said, "you destroyed our family relationship for a man who sees you as a temporary plaything. Congratulations." David tried to take control. "This is a setup. Grace is lying. She's bitter and jealous." "Am I lying, David?" Grace remained calm. "Then explain the apartment lease with your signature. Explain the bank transfers. Explain the photos. Explain your voice on that recording. You recorded me without my knowledge. That's illegal." Barrister Blake stood up. "Actually, Mr. David, in London, recording someone in a public place like a bar is perfectly legal. And even if it wasn't, the other evidence is overwhelming. By the way, I'm Mrs. Grace's attorney and I'll be seeing you in court." David's face went from red to pale. "Court? Oh yes," Barrister Blake smiled. "Divorce court. And possibly criminal court for tax fraud." "Tax fraud?" Mr. Foster stood up. "I'm a forensic accountant and I've been investigating your finances, Mr. David. You have undeclared income, hidden accounts, and fraudulent tax filings. I've already submitted my preliminary findings to the Federal Inland Revenue Service." David looked like he was going to faint. Pastor Miller, our church pastor, stood up. He looked deeply disappointed. "David, I have known you for 8 years. You've been a pillar of this church, a generous giver. But what Grace has shown us today, this is not the behavior of a man of God. This is not the behavior of a man of integrity." "Pastor, I can explain." "Explain what?" "Explain how you psychologically tortured your wife. Explain how you committed adultery with her sister. Explain how you lied to everyone in this church about who you really are." The pastor turned to the congregation. "Let this be a lesson to all of us. A man's wealth does not determine his character. David has shown us that you can have money and success but lack the most important thing, integrity." He turned back to David. "You are no longer welcome in leadership in this church. You need to step down from all positions and seek serious counseling and repentance before you can be restored to fellowship." David tried to protest, but the damage was done. His reputation, the thing he cared about most, was shattered. One of David's business associates, Mr. Austin, stood up. "David, we've been partners for 5 years. But if what's been revealed here is true, especially the tax fraud, I cannot continue in business with you. I'm terminating our partnership effective immediately." Another associate agreed. "Same here, David. I can't be associated with this kind of scandal. It's bad for business." David watched as his business relationships crumbled in real time. "I saved my final revelation for last. There's one more thing everyone should know," Grace said. "David didn't just betray me with my sister. He put our children's financial future at risk by spending marital assets on his mistress. Money that should have been saved for our children's education, for their future. He spent it on apartments, cars, and clothes for Amalia." I showed a detailed breakdown of how much David had diverted from the family finances to support Amalia. "As a mother, I cannot forgive this. As a wife, I will not tolerate this. Today, I'm announcing that I have filed for divorce. I'm seeking full custody of our 3 children. And I'm pursuing legal action to recover every naira that David stole from our family to give to his mistress. The crowd applauded. People stood up and clapped for Grace's courage, for her strength, for her refusal to be a victim. What happened after the exposure was even more dramatic than the event itself. David tried to leave the venue, but he was surrounded by angry guests, particularly women, who wanted to give him a piece of their minds. You should be ashamed of yourself. How could you treat your wife like that? You're a disgrace to men everywhere. Security had to escort David out for his own safety. Amalia tried to go after David, but he pushed her away. Stay away from me. You've ruined everything. But David, I thought you loved me. Loved you? You were convenient. Now you're a liability. Everyone knows about us. My reputation is destroyed. Get away from me. Amalia broke down crying, finally realizing that I had been right. She was never special to David. She was just another tool in his arsenal of manipulation. My mother tried to approach me, but Elle held up her hand. Mama, I have nothing to say to you right now. You chose your side. Now you live with that choice. Grace, please, I'm your mother. A mother protects her daughter. A mother stands by her daughter when she's being abused. You did neither. You chose money over me. So now you get neither the money nor me. I walked away, leaving her mother crying in the middle of the hall. Unknown to David, several guests had been recording the event on their phones. By that evening, videos of the exposure were circulating on WhatsApp, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Headlines on London and blogs. Prominent London businessman exposed for affair with wife's sister. Woman brilliantly exposes cheating husband at fake celebration. Man caught in elaborate lie about wife's body odor to cover affair. Sister-in-law betrayal. The story that's shocking London. The story went viral. Within 48 hours, it had been shared millions of times. News outlets were picking it up. Radio stations were discussing it. It became a national conversation about infidelity, family betrayal, and women's empowerment. David's construction company started losing contracts. Clients didn't want to be associated with the scandal. His business partners were distancing themselves. Amalia became a social pariah. Women across London were calling her every name imaginable. She couldn't go anywhere without being recognized and shamed. I, on the other hand, became a hero to many women. I was being praised for my courage, for my refusal to suffer in silence, for my strategic brilliance in exposing my betrayers. David thought he could fight back in court. He had no idea what Grace and her lawyer had prepared. The divorce case began 3 weeks after the exposure. David had hired an expensive lawyer, hoping to minimize what he would have to pay Grace. The courtroom was packed. The case had attracted so much attention that journalists were there to cover every development. David's lawyer tried to argue that the marriage had broken down due to irreconcilable differences, not mentioning the affair. Mrs. Grace was exaggerating her financial needs. Mrs. Grace was equally capable of supporting herself. The children should have joint custody. David shouldn't have to pay excessive spousal support. Barrister Blake destroyed every one of David's arguments. On the affair, Your Honor, this is not a case of irreconcilable differences. This is a case of adultery, psychological abuse, and financial manipulation. My client's husband systematically destroyed her self-esteem through lies about a non-existent medical condition. He isolated her from her support system. He diverted marital assets to support his mistress, my client's own sister. This isn't a marriage that broke down naturally. This is a marriage that was deliberately destroyed by the respondent. On finances, Your Honor, my client reduced her work hours to care for 3 young children, the respondent's children. She sacrificed career advancement to support the family. During this time, the respondent spent $11.5 million on his mistress while providing only $2.6 million for his wife and children. This is financial abuse, and my client is entitled to compensation. On custody, Your Honor, the respondent announced plans to bring his mistress, my client's sister, into the family home to live as a second wife. He has demonstrated extremely poor judgment and a complete disregard for his children's emotional well-being. My client should have primary custody, with the respondent having supervised visitation until he can demonstrate stability. On asset division, Your Honor, My forensic accountant has identified approximately $250 million in marital assets. Under London and law, my client is entitled to a substantial portion of these assets. Furthermore, the respondent has hidden income and committed tax fraud, which we have documented thoroughly. David's lawyer tried to paint me as vindictive and money-hungry. But Barrister Blake was ready. Your Honor, my client doesn't want revenge. She wants justice. She wants to be compensated for 8 years of marriage, for 3 children, for the career sacrifices she made, for the psychological abuse she endured, and for the marital funds that were illegally diverted to the respondent's mistress. David tried to testify in his own defense, but it went poorly. Cross-examination by Barrister Blake. Mr. David, you told your wife she had a bad body odor, correct? Yes, and you told her this for months? Yes. But medical evidence shows she had no such condition, correct? I thought she did. Or did you make it up to justify your affair and keep her away from you? No. Then why did you tell your friend, on the recording we played, that you were manipulating her? That was taken out of context. I see. And the $11.5 million you spent on Amalia, was that also out of context? David had no good answers. He stumbled, contradicted himself, and ultimately appeared exactly as he was, a liar and manipulator. After 6 weeks of proceedings, the judge delivered the verdict. The marriage between Grace and David is hereby dissolved on grounds of adultery, emotional abuse, and irretrievable breakdown. The primary custody of the 3 minor children is awarded to the petitioner, Mrs. Grace. The respondent, David, shall have supervised visitation every other weekend, pending completion of family counseling. The respondent shall pay $500,000 per month in child support until each child reaches age 18 or completes university education, whichever is later. The respondent shall pay $300,000 per month in spousal support for a period of 5 years, after which the amount will be reviewed. The court finds that the respondent deliberately diverted marital assets to support his extramarital affair. As punishment for this financial misconduct and in recognition of the petitioner's contributions to the marriage, the court awards 60% of all marital assets to the petitioner, Mrs. Grace. The respondent is ordered to reimburse the petitioner for all legal fees and costs associated with this divorce, totaling $2.5 million. David's face went white. The judge wasn't finished. Furthermore, the evidence of tax fraud presented in this case has been forwarded to the appropriate authorities for investigation. Mr. David, you may face additional criminal charges. Let's break down what the verdict meant in real numbers. 60% of $250 million in assets equals $150 million. This included the family home, $45 million, 2 of the 3 rental properties, $40 million. 60% of David's company shares, $48 million. 60% of bank accounts and investments, $24 million. Legal fees reimbursed, $2.5 million. Over 5 years, that's $48 million in support payments. Let's break down what the verdict meant in real numbers. 60% of $250 million in assets equals $150 million. This included the family home, $45 million, 2 of the 3 rental properties, $40 million. 60% of David's company shares, $48 million. 60% of bank accounts and investments, $24 million. Legal fees reimbursed, $2.5 million. Over 5 years, that's $48 million in support payments. Grand total of what Grace secured, approximately $200 million. David had come into the marriage thinking he would always have the power because he had the money. He left the marriage financially devastated, having lost more than half his wealth to the woman he betrayed. But the divorce was just the beginning of David's legal troubles. The Federal Inland Revenue Service, FIRS, launched a full investigation into David's finances based on the evidence Mr. Foster had uncovered. What they found. The FIRS investigators discovered $45 million in undeclared income over 4 years, hidden offshore accounts, false expense claims totaling $12 million, deliberate underreporting of company profits, tax evasion totaling approximately $18 million in unpaid taxes. David was charged with tax evasion, criminal offense, filing false tax returns, money laundering related to the offshore accounts. The penalties were severe. $18 million in back taxes owed. $9 million in penalties and interest. Potential prison sentence of 3 to 5 years. David's lawyers negotiated a plea deal where he paid all back taxes, penalties, and agreed to 200 hours of community service to avoid prison time. But the financial hit, combined with what he lost in the divorce, left him devastated. Remember Amalia, the sister who thought she'd won? Her story gets even worse. After the exposure event, David wanted nothing to do with Amalia. He kicked her out of the apartment he'd been paying for. David, please. Where am I supposed to go? That's not my problem anymore. You've destroyed my life. Get out. Amalia had nowhere to go. She had burned her bridge with me. Her mother was too ashamed to fully support her. She had no job, no savings, she'd spent everything David gave her on clothes and lifestyle. And now, no benefactor. She tried to go back to our family home in the Kent, but even there she was not welcome. Our father, when he heard the full story, was furious. You did what? You slept with your sister's husband. Daddy, I thought he loved me. Love? You destroyed your sister's marriage. You brought shame to this family. The whole of London is talking about us. Do you know how humiliating this is? Even her younger brothers were ashamed of her. Sister Amalia, how could you do this? Sister Grace paid for our school fees. He helped our family. And you repaid her like this. Amalia realized that she had lost everything. David, Grace, her family's respect, her reputation, and her self-respect. Everywhere Amalia went, she was recognized. The videos from the exposure event had made her face famous across London, but she couldn't get a job. No one wanted to hire the sister who betrayed her family. She couldn't go out in public without being harassed. She lost all her friends. No one wanted to be associated with her. She tried to apologize to Grace through text messages. Sister, I'm sorry. I made a terrible mistake. Please forgive me. I didn't respond. Sister, I have nowhere to go. I need help. Still no response. Sister, you've won. You've destroyed my life. Are you happy now? Finally, Al responded with one message. I didn't destroy your life, Amalia. You did that yourself when you chose to betray your family. I hope one day you understand the difference between consequences and revenge. Don't contact me again. Alone, broke, and abandoned, Amalia finally understood what she had done. She had thrown away a sister who loved her, who had supported her, who had been her champion. All for a man who never truly valued her. She had believed David's lies about Grace. She had convinced herself that she deserved to be with him, that she was special. But she was never special to David. She was just convenient, just available, just another conquest in his game of manipulation. 6 months after the exposure, Amalia was working as a shop assistant in a small boutique, living in a tiny one-room apartment, isolated from her family and former friends. She had learned the hardest lesson of her life. Betrayal comes with a price, and sometimes that price is everything you hold dear. My mother learned that choosing money over family has its own consequences. My mother, Mummy Amalia, found herself isolated from her own children. I wouldn't speak to her. The younger sons were disappointed in her. Even her husband was ashamed of how she had handled the situation. You should have protected your daughter, Daddy, Amalia told his wife. Instead, you chose that man's money. Now look what has happened. Remember, Mummy Amalia's primary reason for supporting David was financial. He paid Daddy's medical bills and the boys' school fees. After the divorce and the exposure, David stopped all financial support to my family. He was too busy dealing with his own financial and legal troubles. Daddy's medical bills went unpaid. The boys' school fees were overdue. The family was in financial crisis. The exact situation Mummy Amalia had been trying to avoid by staying on David's good side. Ironically, the only person who could help them now was me. The daughter Mummy Amalia had betrayed. My mother showed up at new apartment. Yes, I had moved out of the house I shared with David, 3 months after the divorce. Grace, my daughter, please. We need to talk. I let her in but remained cold. What do you want, Mother? I want to apologize. I was wrong. I should have supported you. I should have been on your side. You should have. But you weren't. You chose money over your daughter. So now what do you want? Your father's medical bills. The boys' school fees. We need help. So you're here because you need money. Not because you actually feel sorry for what you did. Not because you genuinely want to make amends. You're here because David cut you off and now you need me. Grace, please. Mother, let me tell you something. When I needed you, you weren't there. When I was being psychologically tortured by my husband, you told me to accept it. When I discovered my sister was sleeping with my husband, you told me to let them be happy together. You prioritized money over my mental health, my dignity, my children's well-being. And now you come to me asking for that same money? Mummy began to cry. I know I was wrong. I'm sorry. I'm truly sorry. I softened slightly, but I remained firm. Mum, I will help with Daddy's medical bills because he's my father and he didn't betray me. I will help with the boys' school fees because they're my brothers and they're innocent in all this. But I'm doing it for them, not for you. And you need to understand something. You've lost something that money can never buy back. What's that? My trust. My respect. My belief that my mother would always be on my side. That's gone, Mother. Maybe one day I'll fully forgive you, but it won't be today, and it won't be because you need money. I established clear boundaries with my mother. I paid for Daddy's medical bills directly to the hospital, pay the boys' school fees directly to the school, provide a modest monthly allowance for household expenses, $100,000, but I did not give Mummy direct access to large sums of money, or include her in family decisions and pretend everything was fine between us. Allow Mummy unlimited access to her grandchildren. You can see the children once a month, supervised by me. You can call them once a week. But you need to earn back the right to be fully present in our lives. And that will take time, Mother, a lot of time. Mummy had no choice but to accept these terms. She had gambled on David's money and lost everything that truly mattered. While my betrayers fell apart, I was rebuilding herself into someone even stronger than before. The first few months after the exposure and divorce were difficult for me, despite my victory. I was dealing with the emotional trauma of betrayal. Adjusting to single motherhood, managing my children's reactions to the divorce, and rebuilding my life from the ground up. But I had something my betrayers didn't have: a clear conscience, true friends, and a determination to thrive. I started seeing a therapist, Dr. Eleanor Brooks, who specialized in helping women recover from emotional abuse and infidelity. Grace, what you experienced wasn't just infidelity, Dr. Brooks explained in our first session. It was systematic psychological abuse. Daniel deliberately made you question your reality. That's called gaslighting, and it has lasting effects. Through therapy, I learned to recognize the signs of manipulation, to trust my own perceptions again, to process the trauma without letting it define her. That the abuse was never my fault. To set healthy boundaries in future relationships. For months, he made me think I was losing my mind, I'll admit it to Dr. Brooks. Even now, sometimes I catch myself wondering if I overreacted, if exposing him was too much. That's the lingering effect of gaslighting, Dr. Brooks said gently. He conditioned you to doubt yourself. But Grace, look at the facts. Look at the pattern. You didn't overreact. You responded appropriately to betrayal, deceit, and emotional harm. You protected yourself and your children. That isn't revenge, that's survival. These sessions transformed me. I began to see myself not as a victim but as a survivor. Not as broken but as rebuilding. Not as weak but as a woman who walked through hell and made it out stronger. With the divorce settlement providing financial security, I had the freedom to make bold career moves. I returned to work full-time at my financial analyst position, but quickly realized I wanted more. I had learned so much through my own divorce about finances, asset protection, and women's economic empowerment. 6 months after the divorce, Elle made a major decision. I left her corporate job and started my own financial consulting firm called Grace and Associates, Financial Independence for Women. My mission was clear: to help women, especially married women, understand their finances, protect their assets, and maintain economic independence within their marriages. My story had made me famous, or infamous depending on who you asked. But I leveraged that notoriety into a successful business. Women across London wanted to work with me because they trusted someone who had been through the fire and come out stronger. Within a year, my firm had 15 clients. Within 2 years, I had 50 clients and had hired 3 employees. Within 3 years, Grace and Associates was one of the most respected women-focused financial consulting firms in London. I was making $10 to $15 million per year from my business, approaching what David used to make, but this money was entirely her own. I used part of my divorce settlement wisely. I invested $60 million in real estate, purchased a beautiful 4-bedroom apartment in a safe, child-friendly neighborhood, $35 million, bought 2 rental properties that generated monthly income, $25 million combined. The rental properties brought in $600,000 per month in rental income. Combined with my business income and the support payments from David, I was financially independent and secure. I made sure my children understood the importance of smart financial decisions. Your father had money, but he used it foolishly, I told them. We're going to build wealth the right way, through hard work, smart investments, and integrity. I also focused on her physical and mental health. Not because David's criticisms had been valid, but because I wanted to feel strong and healthy for herself. I joined a gym and worked with a personal trainer. We started eating better and exercising regularly. I got back into hobbies I had abandoned during my marriage: painting, reading, dancing. 6 months after the divorce, I looked radiant. I had lost the stress weight, my skin glowed, and my eyes sparkled with a confidence I thought I had lost forever. I wasn't trying to prove anything to Daniel. I was simply becoming the best version of myself. Women would stop me on the street and say, "You're the woman who exposed her husband. You look incredible, you're glowing." And I would smile and reply, "That's what happens when you remove toxic people from your life. You finally begin to bloom." My 3 children, Lily 8, Oliver 6, and Bella 2, had been through so much. I was determined to help them heal the right way. What I did for my children, I didn't lie to them about why their parents were divorcing. I explained in simple terms that their father had made hurtful choices. I reassured them over and over that nothing was their fault. All 3 of them saw a child psychologist. They learned healthy ways to express their feelings. They learned it was okay to love their father while not agreeing with what he did. I kept everything predictable: same mealtimes, same bedtimes, same school. I turned our new apartment into a warm, safe home. I made sure they stayed connected to the friends and activities they loved. Despite everything Daniel had done, I never spoke badly about him in front of them. I allowed them to form their own relationship with him. I encouraged them to respect their father while also understanding my worth. That I taught my daughters that no woman should ever tolerate mistreatment. I taught my son that real manhood is about integrity, not just providing. I showed all of them that women can be strong, capable, and resilient. Within a year, the children adjusted beautifully. They were thriving in school, had great friendships, and grew a deep respect for the strength I showed. One afternoon, Lily, the oldest, looked up at me and said, "Mom, when I grow up, I want to be strong like you. I want to be able to take care of myself so no one can ever treat me badly." I hugged her tightly, tears filling my eyes. "You will be, my love. You absolutely will be." Just when I thought all the drama was over, something happened that no 2 years after the divorce. 2 years after the divorce, David's life had completely collapsed. His property development company had lost more than 60% of its clients after the scandal. He lost a huge portion of his wealth in the divorce settlement. HRC forced him to pay £3.4 million in back taxes, penalties, and legal fees. He was paying £22,000 per month in child and spousal support. His business partners distanced themselves. No one wanted to be associated with his reputation. He was no longer respected in the community. Our church removed him from every leadership role he once held. Former friends avoided him. He couldn't attend social events without whispers and judgment trailing behind him. He was completely alone. Amelia had long disappeared from his life. He had fallen into depression and was seeing a therapist. His relationship with the children was strained. They were polite but emotionally distant. He had gained weight and looked 10 years older. One evening, I received a text from David. "Grace, I need to talk to you. Not about money or the children. I need to apologize. Can we meet? I understand if you say no." I stared at the message for a long time. In 2 years, David had never apologized. Not once. Not even a hint of remorse. Seeing those words felt unreal. I discussed it with Zoe and Dr. Brooks. "What do you want to do?" Dr. Brooks asked gently. "I don't know," I admitted. "Part of me wants to hear him out. Part of me thinks it's a trap, or manipulation." "Then trust your instincts," she said. "If you agree to meet, do it in a public place. And take someone you trust nearby." I nodded. That made sense. So I agreed to meet him at a quiet coffee shop in South Kensington. Zoe sat at a nearby table, close enough to watch, far enough not to be obvious. When Davidal walked in, I barely recognized him. He looked exhausted, defeated, smaller somehow. The confident swagger that once defined him had completely vanished. "Thank you for meeting me," he said, his voice low, breaking slightly. "I know I don't deserve even this much." I folded my arms calmly. "Daniel, what do you want?" He swallowed hard, eyes glossy with shame. "I want to apologize. A real apology, not excuses, not justification." He took a shaky breath. "I know what I did was wrong and I'm sorry." I said nothing. I waited. I wanted to see where this was going. "I destroyed our marriage. I abused you psychologically. I lied to you, manipulated you, made you question your sanity. I betrayed you with your own sister. I prioritized my ego and my desires over you, over our children, over everything that should have mattered." He paused, his voice breaking. "And the worst part is, I convinced myself that you were the problem. I made you the villain in my own mind so I could justify my terrible behavior. I told myself you were suffocating me, that you had let yourself go, that I deserved better. But the truth is, I was the problem. I was the one who wasn't worthy of you." I remained silent, watching him carefully. "I've been in therapy for a year now," David continued. "My therapist helped me understand what I did. I'm a narcissist, Grace. I have narcissistic personality disorder. It doesn't excuse what I did, but it explains it. I was so focused on my own needs, my own image, that I couldn't see how much I was hurting you." "Why are you telling me this now?" Grace asked. "Because you deserve to hear it. You deserved to hear it 2 years ago, but I was too proud, too defensive. I blamed you for exposing me, blamed you for ruining my life. But you didn't ruin my life, Grace. I did that myself. Everything that happened to me, the divorce, the financial losses, the public shame, I brought it all on myself." I took a deep breath. That I had imagined this moment so many times over the past 2 years. I had pictured myself being cold, distant, untouchable. I had pictured myself telling David exactly what I thought of him. Every wound, every lie, every piece of manipulation. But standing there, looking at the shell of the man who once tried to destroy me, I felt something I never expected. Pity. Not love. Not longing. Not regret. Just pity. He looked broken in a way I had never seen before. His shoulders slumped, his eyes tired, his confidence gone. He wasn't the powerful, arrogant man who had gaslit me into doubting my own sanity. He was just a man who had ruined his own life. And for the first time I realized, I no longer hated him. I no longer feared him. I no longer needed anything from him. Not explanations, not apologies, not validation. I had healed. He hadn't. "David, I appreciate the apology. I really do. But you need to understand something. This apology is more for you than for me. You need to hear yourself take responsibility. You need to acknowledge what you did. That's part of your healing process." "I know that, but I've already healed. I've already moved on. I forgave you a long time ago, not because you deserved it, but because I needed to release that anger and pain to move forward with my life." David looked surprised. "Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting," I continued. "It doesn't mean what you did was okay. It doesn't mean I want you back in my life beyond co-parenting our children. It just means I'm not carrying the weight of your betrayal anymore." "I understand. I hope you continue with your therapy. I hope you become a better man, if not for me, then for our children. They deserve a father who is emotionally healthy and capable of genuine love." "I'm trying. I really am." "Good. Keep trying." "And David." "Yes. Thank you for the apology. It means something that you finally took responsibility. But this doesn't change anything between us. We're divorced and that's how it will stay. The best thing you can do now is focus on being a good father and building a life you can be proud of." David nodded, tears in his eyes. "You're an amazing woman, Grace. I didn't see it when we were married. But I see it now. And I'm genuinely sorry for everything." I stood up to leave. "Goodbye, David. I wish you well." As I walked away, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. A weight I had carried for far too long. The truth hit me gently, almost like a warm breeze. I didn't need David's apology to heal. I had already done that work on my own. In therapy. In silence did I end the nights I cried myself to sleep and still woke up determined to rebuild my life. But hearing him finally take responsibility, hearing him say, "I'm sorry," without excuses or manipulation, It brought a level of closure I didn't even realize I still needed. For the first time in years I felt completely free. Free from the pain. Free from the past. Free from the version of myself who once begged him to love her. I walked out of that cafe with my head high, my heart steady, and my future wide open. I wasn't just healed, I was whole. Meanwhile, Amalia was on her own journey, one that would test whether true change is possible. 3 years after the exposure, Amalia had hit rock bottom multiple times and slowly begun climbing back up. She had spent a year in deep depression, isolated and alone. She had attempted to reconnect with old friends, but most wanted nothing to do with her. She had tried to find decent work, but her reputation preceded her. Finally, she did what she should have done from the beginning. She took responsibility. Amalia started attending a support group for people dealing with shame and public scandal. There she met others who had made terrible mistakes and were trying to rebuild their lives. Hi, my name is Amalia, and 3 years ago I betrayed my sister by having an affair with her husband. Saying it out loud, owning it without excuses, was the first step in her long journey toward redemption. Amelia also started seeing a therapist, Dr. Eleanor Whitmore, a specialist in personality disorders and dysfunctional family dynamics. Amelia, let's talk about why you did what you did, Dr. Whitmore said calmly during their first session, her voice steady and grounding. Amelia shifted uneasily in the velvet chair, twisting a tissue between her fingers. Her eyes were red, her breathing uneven. Guilt had been sitting on her chest for months. I don't even know where to start, she whispered. Dr. Whitmore leaned forward slightly. Start with the truth. Not the version you told yourself. The real one. Why did you betray Grace? What were you trying to fill? Amelia's throat tightened. Jealousy. Insecurity. A desperate need to feel chosen by someone. Anyone. But saying the words out loud felt like standing naked in a storm. I always felt like Grace was everything I wasn't, Amelia said, voice trembling. She was loved, respected, confident. Everyone admired her. I was always the one struggling, the one nobody took seriously. When David noticed me, it felt like I finally mattered. Dr. Whitmore watched her carefully. And did it make you matter? Amelia shook her head immediately, tears spilling over. No. Destroyed everything. I destroyed everything. The therapist nodded once, jotting down a note. Good. That's honesty. And that's where healing begins. Not in excuses, in truth. For the first time in a very long time, Amelia felt something shift inside her. Not forgiveness. Not relief. But the smallest spark of self-awareness. And that was more than she'd had in years. And now? How do you see it now? I didn't win anything. I lost everything that mattered. My sister, my family, my self-respect. And Grace? She's thriving. She was always going to be okay because she's strong and good. I was the weak one, not her. After 2 years of therapy and personal work, Amalia wrote a letter to me. She didn't expect a response, she just needed to say these things. Dear Grace, I know you probably don't want to hear from me and I don't blame you. But I need to say some things even if you never read this letter. I'm sorry. I'm so deeply, profoundly sorry for what I did to you. I betrayed you in the worst possible way. You were my sister, my protector, my benefactor, and I repaid your love and generosity with betrayal. I've spent 3 years trying to understand why I did it. I've been in therapy, I've been in support groups, I've done a lot of painful self-reflection. And what I've learned is that I was jealous of you. I always have been. You were everything I wanted to be. Successful, confident, loved, stable. And instead of being inspired by you, instead of learning from you, I resented you. When David showed interest in me, it felt like I was finally winning at something. Finally being chosen. Finally being the special one. But I wasn't special to David. I was just convenient. And in trying to beat you at something, I lost everything that mattered. I don't expect your forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But I want you to know that I've changed. I'm not the same person who betrayed you. I've spent 3 years becoming someone I can respect. Someone who understands the value of integrity, loyalty, and family. I'm working at a small nonprofit now, helping young women make better choices than I did. I'm sharing my story, anonymously, to warn others about the consequences of jealousy and betrayal. I'm trying to turn my terrible mistake into something that might help others. I think about you often. I see your business success in the news and I'm proud of you. I always should have been proud of you instead of jealous. I don't expect us to ever have a relationship again. I know I destroyed that forever. But I hope you know that I'm genuinely sorry and I'm spending the rest of my life trying to be the person I should have been all along. Your sister. Though I don't deserve to call myself that. Amalia. I received the letter and read it carefully. After sitting with it for a moment, I shared it with Zoe and Dr. Richard. How do you feel about it? Dr. Richard asked gently. Honestly, I feel nothing, I said. No anger. No sadness. No desire to reconnect. Just nothing. That's perfectly okay, Dr. Richard replied. You don't owe Amelia a response. You don't owe her forgiveness. You don't owe her a relationship. Part of me is glad she's getting better, I admitted quietly. I never wanted her to suffer forever. But I can't forget what she did. And I don't want her back in my life. After thinking it through, I wrote a brief response. I received your letter. I appreciate that you're taking responsibility and doing the work to change. I genuinely hope you continue on that path. However, I'm not ready to have you back in my life and I may never be ready. What happened caused too much damage. The trust is gone and I don't see a path to rebuilding it. I wish you well in your journey, but please respect my boundary. I don't want future contact. Amelia received my response and cried, but she understood. She knew she had no right to expect more. My willingness to even respond was already far more grace than she deserved. 5 years after the betrayal, my life looked nothing like it did before. It looked better. 5 years post-divorce, Grace and Associates had become a powerhouse, that I had also become a sought-after speaker and author. I published a book, Rising from Betrayal, A Woman's Guide to Financial and Emotional Independence. I also gave talks at women's conferences across London. My message was always the same. Your worth is not determined by who loves you or who betrays you. Your worth is inherent and you have the power to build a life you're proud of. Many people asked me if I was dating, if I had found new love. I'm not looking for it, I would say. But I'm not closed off to it either. If someone truly special comes along, someone who respects me, values me, and adds to my life rather than complicates it, I'm open. But I'm also completely happy on my own. I don't need a man to complete me. I'm already whole. In year 4 after the divorce, I did meet someone. A widower named Austin, a university professor with 2 teenage children. He was kind, intelligent, emotionally mature, and genuinely impressed by Grace's strength and success. We dated slowly, carefully. I introduced him to my children only after we'd been dating for 8 months. I made sure this man understood my boundaries, my priorities, and her non-negotiables. I've been through hell, Grace told him early in their relationship. I won't tolerate lies, manipulation, or disrespect. I need complete honesty and genuine partnership. That's exactly what I want too, Austin said. I lost my wife to cancer 3 years ago. I understand pain and I understand the value of genuine love. I'm not here to play games, Grace. I'm here because I see something special in you and I want to build something real. Their relationship grew slowly but surely. By year 5, they were seriously discussing marriage. But this time, Grace was entering with her eyes wide open, with a prenuptial agreement, with full financial independence, and with the wisdom that comes from surviving betrayal. Lily, now 13, was top of her class, confident, outspoken, and determined to be a lawyer when she grew up. I want to help women like Mommy, she said. I want to make sure bad people face consequences. David Jr., now 11, was excelling in school and sports. He had a close relationship with both parents but deeply respected his mother. My dad made mistakes, he told his friends. But my mom showed me what real strength looks like. Isabella, now 7, was too young to remember much of the divorce drama, but she grew up watching her mother be independent, successful, and happy. She learned from an early age that women don't need to be rescued, they can rescue themselves. All 3 children had a healthy relationship with their father. David had done the work in therapy, had become more emotionally available, and was genuinely trying to be a better father. Grace facilitated this, not for David's sake but for her children's. Your father loves you, Grace told them. He made terrible mistakes in our marriage, but that doesn't mean he's incapable of being a good father. You can love him and learn from him while also understanding that what he did was wrong. Grace's relationship with her mother slowly improved over the 5 years, though it never fully returned to what it was. Mummy Amalia had learned her lesson. To every woman and man, should maintain some level of financial independence. Have your own bank account, your own credit history, your own career or income source. This isn't about not trusting your partner. It's about protecting yourself and maintaining your autonomy. Abusers rely on their victims' silence. They count on you being too ashamed to tell the truth. When you break that silence, when you expose the gap between their public image and private behavior, you take away their power. You also validate your own experience and make it harder for them to manipulate others. Grace's journey from betrayal to triumph took years, not days or months. Healing isn't linear. Justice isn't immediate. Building a new life takes time. Be patient with yourself. Celebrate small victories. Trust that consistent effort will eventually lead to transformation. If you're going through something similar to what Grace experienced, here's what you need to know. You're being gaslighted. This is one of the most painful betrayals because it's a double betrayal, romantic and familial. Grace's story is part of a larger conversation we need to have about relationships, power, and justice. No one is responsible for their partner's decision to cheat. David didn't cheat because Grace smelled bad or looked different after having children. He cheated because he chose to. That choice reflects his character, not Grace's inadequacy. To women experiencing betrayal, you are not alone. Millions of women have experienced what you're going through. Your pain is valid. Your anger is justified. Your grief is real. You are not crazy. If someone is making you question your reality, that's abuse, not confusion. You are not weak for staying. Leaving is complicated, especially with children and finances involved. Don't judge yourself for the time it takes to leave. You are not damaged goods. What happened to you doesn't define you. You can heal. You can thrive. You can love again. You deserve better. No matter what anyone says, no matter what you've been told, you deserve respect, honesty, loyalty, and genuine love. David lost everything because of his choices. His wealth, his reputation, his family, his self-respect. All gone because he chose ego and desire over integrity. If you recognize narcissistic tendencies in yourself, if you find yourself manipulating or controlling your partner, seek help. You can change, but you have to want to and work for it. The way you treat their mother teaches them how relationships should work. Do you want your sons to become men like you? Do you want your daughters to accept treatment like you give? David eventually took responsibility and worked to become better. You can too. But you have to start now and you have to do the real work. Your daughter needs you. When she's being abused or betrayed, she needs you to stand with her, not against her. She needs you to be her advocate, not her judge. Staying together for the family has limits. Yes, marriage requires work and compromise. But there's a difference between normal marital challenges and abuse/betrayal. Don't pressure your daughter to stay in a harmful situation. You can rebuild trust, but it takes time. If you've already chosen wrong, acknowledge it, apologize sincerely, and prove through consistent actions that you've changed. Don't expect immediate forgiveness. Your support matters more than you know. When everyone else doubted Grace or chose the wrong side, Zoe's unwavering support kept Grace afloat. Tell the truth even when it's hard. Zoe could have hidden David's advances to avoid drama. Instead, she told Grace the truth even though it was painful. Be the friend you'd want in that situation. When your friend is going through hell, show up. Believe them. Help practically. Don't judge. Don't minimize. Just be there. Protect your boundaries. Zoe also modeled healthy boundaries by rejecting David's advances and refusing to keep his secrets. Grace's story teaches us that sometimes the worst things that happen to us become the catalyst for our greatest transformation. Grace's betrayal was devastating, but it also freed her. If David hadn't betrayed her, she might have stayed in a mediocre marriage for decades, slowly losing herself, never discovering her full potential. The betrayal forced her to rebuild from scratch. And in rebuilding, she created something better than what she had before. A life built on her own terms with her own strength, reflecting her own values. This doesn't make the betrayal okay. It doesn't justify what David, Amalia, and Mummy did. But it shows that we can find purpose and growth even in our darkest moments. Many people called Grace's exposure of David revenge. But Grace never saw it that way. Revenge is about hurting someone because they hurt you. It's reactive, emotional, and often leaves you feeling empty afterward. Justice is about holding someone accountable for their actions. It's about protecting yourself and others, about ensuring consequences, about standing up for what's right. Grace pursued justice, not revenge. She exposed David to protect herself, to get what she was legally entitled to, and to ensure he faced consequences. She didn't do it to make him suffer. She did it to make herself safe. The fact that David suffered was a natural consequence of his own actions, not Grace's vindictiveness. Grace's true victory wasn't the money she won in the divorce, wasn't the public humiliation of her betrayers, wasn't even her successful business. For months, David had made her question her own reality, had made her feel worthless and disgusting, had stripped away her confidence and self-respect. Grace's journey wasn't just about leaving David, it was about finding herself again. Remembering that she was smart, capable, strong, valuable, and worthy of love and respect. That's the real story here. Not revenge, not justice, not even survival, but reclamation. Reclaiming her truth, her worth, her power, and her life. If you take nothing else from Grace's story, take this. You are stronger than you think. When Grace's world fell apart, she didn't think she could survive. But she did. You can too. Your truth matters. Grace's story is over, but yours continues. If you're in a situation like Grace was, please know, you deserve better. Help is available. You are not alone. You can survive this. You can thrive after this. Subscribe to this channel for more real stories of survival and triumph. Comment below with your thoughts, experiences, or words of encouragement. Share this video with someone who needs to hear this story. Turn on notifications. You are enough. And your story, whatever it is, matters. If Grace's story helped you, if it gave you hope or strength or clarity, please share it. You never know who needs to hear this exact message today. Someone in your life might be experiencing what Grace experienced. They might be doubting themselves, feeling trapped, wondering if they're crazy. Your share could be the catalyst that helps them recognize the truth and find the courage to change their situation. Share this story. Save a life. Change a life. Until next time. This channel is dedicated to sharing real stories of real people overcoming real challenges. Stories of betrayal and redemption. Stories of pain and triumph. Stories that remind us of our shared humanity and our incredible resilience. More powerful stories are coming. Your past doesn't determine your future. Your betrayal doesn't define you. Your pain doesn't have to be permanent. You can heal. You can thrive. You can build a life you're proud of.